there, everyone. Welcome to our East Bay Comps and Coffee. We like to come to people, our clients, people we know, with information that helps them, right? So we're always trying to give you guys the scoop on details and market information as we see the markets changing. But today we want to talk to buyers. We want to talk to you, anyone that's been struggling finding a home or finding a home and securing an offer. Our market all over the country has been very active. So buyers are struggling. There's typically multiple offers on properties, and we have so many families come to us pretty beat up after looking for 6 months and having a hard time. So we have some tools to share. And we also have a special guest that we wanted to introduce first. So today we're going to help you with how to secure a house, which Ryan and I are going to talk about, and or how to find one. And then Darrell, of course, is going to help us with how to secure and get your offer accepted. So Darrell is one of our most favorite lenders. Thank you for joining us, Darrell.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to join you and Ryan this morning.
Yeah.
So for a lot of buyers, especially, whether they're buying their first home or they're buying their 10th house, marketplace, the more knowledge you have, the better, only because it's such a fast moving market. Your decision about buying could literally be offers are due in an hour, right? And so I think is important as my goal is to educate that client as much as possible so that they feel completely comfortable about moving forward. And I think one of the things that's most important, of course, is what I call like knowing your number. And there's a lot of clients I'll talk to and we'll start, discussing various numbers. And it turns out that, they are actually qualified for a lot more home than they feel comfortable paying. And for me, it's very important that they start off at that lower range, because if they right to the top right away, there's going to be something they like about that more expensive home, right? Whether it's a different area or an additional bedroom or square footage. So I think it's extremely important that they know that number. And especially nowadays, which I'm sure you and Ryan will get into, nowadays your offers have to be so competitive, right? You might have to have no appraisal contingency, no loan contingency. So you have to have 100% confidence that there's not going to be an issue. And that's my role, I feel, in order to prepare you so that that offer is as competitive as possible.
Yeah, exactly. We were brainstorming earlier, today's market, over the years, markets have had ebbs and flows. And one of the biggest driving factors today, and buyers sometimes ask us, why is the market so heated? Part of it is because companies are telling their employees that they can work from home. So people can live farther away from their work now. So the East Bay is a suburban, beautiful area that people are drawn to because of schools and stuff. So we're seeing so much more activity. So we were talking with you earlier, Darrell, about the importance of a buyer. You mentioned about being prepared, knowing your numbers, but also taking it a step farther, right? And becoming underwritten and not just pre-approved. So talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Lisa's referring to is the fact that, you want to get as far into the process as possible, right? Because part of that competitive offer is not only maybe not having a loan or appraisal contingency, but maybe even trying to shorten that time frame. Yeah. And that's incredibly important in this current marketplace. Sometimes it even just comes down to who's doing your loan. And in that aspect, we are a direct lender as well as a broker. And right now, the market is just so saturated with business, whether it's purchases and still refinances, that I have not brokered a transaction in over a year. And for those that maybe not know what that means, is that we package a loan we package a loan like we normally would, but we send it to a different company. Once we send it to that company, we lose control. I much prefer to have the loan done in-house, where I can call my underwriting manager on her cell phone and review things. So it's all that type of thing, just to make sure that we're as far into the process as possible. And especially with clients where maybe their income is a little questionable, we certainly definitely want to get them underwritten and ready to go.
Well, and you brought up something that we hadn't even talked about that I wanted to share real quick. So part of a buyer competing, so the average home in our market right now, Ryan, how many offers would you say the average house is getting right now?
In Sereno and Danville, 20 to 25, and that's not an exaggeration. Yeah.
And even the high end is seeing, 8 to 10 offers in many cases. And so, one of the things that we hadn't really even discussed before is that the agent and the seller's confidence when they receive that offer. And I have to tell you, we come to buyers, or buyers come to us often, and sometimes they already have their own lender, Darrell. Their lender may be someone that they were referred to, but this person isn't even a local lender. They might be working, it's an online company, and no offense to online companies, but there's that level of a little bit of insecurity on the other agent's part. When we bring an offer with someone like you, where when you tell me it's a green light, I have never had anything ever fail, ever. So we need to bring confidence to the seller and the buyer. And if they're working with a company or a lender that they don't recognize, they're not likely to have as
Yeah.
much confidence as when you take on someone like you, is backing that loan. So it's a big deal.
Oh, well, thank you. And well, actually, to add to that, I actually will, mention to clients is because to me, it's very important is what is the relationship? Because like you're touching on, I have, if you give me a referral or Ryan or somebody, there is a high level of accountability that I take on. Whereas if it's just calling, saw like an ad they saw on television, unfortunately, you're just one of however many loans they're working on. And they're making the same income on a refinance as it is a purchase. And they could just kick that refinance down the road, if you need extra time. You can't do that on a purchase, as you've got those finite timeframes and you got to hit those timeframes.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, because most sellers, they have, if once we get our offer accepted for our client, they are likely to have at least one backup offer in place. And we've had so many times over the years where a lender that we don't know out of area ends up taking too long to get the house closed. And I mean, you've even saved me before many times where you jumped in on someone else's file and helped me. And I so appreciate it, and helped the seller with some confidence that we could actually get this done. But if you can't close on time, they're not going to wait. They're going to move on to the next buyer who's willing to close in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, I think the biggest horror story that I recall, this happened a few years ago. And it was a situation where they were, the particular client was chasing rate.
yeah.
And they got down to, it was a Friday afternoon, they were waiting to close. And the lender came back and said, well, we did a last minute appraisal review and we're not moving forward with the loan. I mean, they were ready to close. And if I recall correctly, I think their escrow deposit was like $46,000. The seller was very angry. They did, what's called a demand to close escrow, where they had 3 days. They had to secure private financing at a tremendous rate just to close the deal to protect the deposit. So, it's very important that you hit those times without a doubt.
100%. And all of that is down to the preparing.
Absolutely.
One other thing we were talking about earlier is a buyer who's looking at a certain price range. They max out at a price. I know, Ryan, we were talking about your clients where this was the case. So why don't you share the advice that we discussed earlier, about looking at price ranges that give you some space,
Yeah, well, say if you're, pre-approved from Darrell and you're qualified for 1.5, with this current market, we're not seeing a list price of 1.5 end up in escrow for 1.5. We're seeing that be a 1.65 or even a $1.7 million home after the multiple offer scenario. So as a buyer, if you're pre-approved for 1.5, you really want to be looking around 1.3 or 1.35 as a list price, because that's going to give you some wiggle room to compete against multiple offers.
Yeah, exactly. You can't, you just need to make sure that, there's a few strategies. Of course, Ryan and I are going to talk with you about the whole hunting of the house strategy. But once you have found the home, making sure that you're strong with a lender like Darrell, and then being, like you said, being prepared to remove all contingencies when possible, loan and appraisal, if you're comfortable. And we would always talk with you about what that looks like and making sure that you're feeling secure in that. Part of it too is we've worked in this area for so many years. We can really give you some security of certain communities and the resale values of certain neighborhoods, and really help you feel comfortable and confident. Absolutely. Yeah, very good. So what else would you like to share, Darrell? And one thing that I wanted to ask you, and that we didn't even talk about this before we jumped on live, so you can tell me or not if it's possible. So we've had on occasion loans where we get buyers often today that say, I really want this bigger home, I really want this single story, but they're afraid to let go of their house they have because they are now, they don't want to be homeless while they're searching. So loans that have been available where they could secure the purchase before they sell, how is that looking right now? What's the availability of that?
Actually, your timing's perfect, because the program we did for one of your clients.
Yes.
I don't think it was, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't last year. I think it was maybe a little bit prior to the year before. when COVID hit last year, we had a lot of these investors that got out of the market.
Yeah.
And this particular investor we were one of the first companies they came back to. So this program just rolled out last week. And so what Lisa's referring to is it allows you to purchase a home before you sell your existing one. And of course, you can normally do that anyways. But what's special about this particular program is that if you go to buy the house first, the lender, pretty much every other lender, is going to count the existing payment on the property that you're vacating. And with the sales prices the way they are, it's very difficult to qualify with both payments. What this program does is that as long as you have the added reserves, which reserves are basically so many months worth of your proposed payment. But as long as you have a few extra months reserves, they won't count the payment on the vacating residence. So that's tremendous. Now, and there's the only barrier that creates too is sometimes people will say, well, gosh, I have $800,000 of equity in my house. I need to use that for the down payment. And what happens, I'm kind of going in the weeds here, but what we essentially then is we seek out, financing that allows you to, via a bridge loan perhaps, where you can access those funds, use it to purchase your house, and it all works out that way. So that program just came back on board. In fact, I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to tell you, but that came on just last week.
Well, I'm so excited that we're talking about this because that is a great program. I think the only rule is they have to have their house listed. They have to just have a document. They don't even have to be on the market yet, right? Or is it?
No, on this particular one, there's that part of it. Yeah. They can just say that we just need a letter from them. They don't even have to necessarily put it on the market at this point. So perfect. That's a great program.
Awesome. That's so cool. And then give a quick update on interest rates right now, Darrell. Let people know where are we at?
Yeah. So as far as interest rates go, we've seen a pretty significant increase over the last week. I had a few clients this was like Friday morning, and I could already tell that we kind of went through some particular worrisome technical levels, and that the rates were higher. I had a couple clients that were on the fence. I locked them in. I didn't even tell them about it because I was that confident. And I shared with them the other day. I go, it's about a $10,000 difference from if I had not locked the rate in. But in terms of general rate, the range of rates, we're probably about 0.25% higher. Now, this very well could be short-lived. Sometimes the market has these technical type trades without getting into too much detail. And we kind of pierced some of those levels. And sometimes we bounce off of those. And so people might see that. But for the time being, rates are still fantastic, right? Maybe we were 2.75, maybe we're 3% now, right? So it's not a big deal, but that does make a difference, when you're looking at properties that are a particular price point.
Well, I talked to one family yesterday that you are in the process of working on their loan. And hopefully she doesn't mind. I'm using her first name, Carolyn. She said to me, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. Rates went up and Darrell locked us in at 2.6. So, so anyway, they have a special loan because of circumstances. They ended up a little less than normal, but they were delighted that you did that. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing I think that's important is that I'm a big proponent of guaranteeing that rate up front. It's always the client's decision. Right. But, I always tell people there's more value in today's rate than, the uncertainty of tomorrow. Right. So, and the vast majority of clients really will lock in the rate, but there's some luck involved, certainly.
So, okay. So the next step is, of course, finding a house. And so, you're involved in the securing of the process. And, right. Ryan and I have some tips we can share on once you are ready to write an offer, how can we help you? But the finding of the house is a big deal. One of the tools that we use for a lot of our clients, and Ryan's going to share a few things right now, is we're really working diligently to find you opportunities before the house has ever come for sale. That's the key. So it's if we can secure you opportunities where you get to see a house before anyone else does, that's huge. And we're in escrow right now with a few families where that's the case. And as far as to give an update to the sellers that might be watching this, when we come to them with a buyer who's searching, we've had probably 5 or 6 times in the last few months, sellers say to us, because of COVID, we don't want a bunch of groups of people coming through our home. If you bring me a good qualified buyer who will give me time to move, and it's a good offer, they would love that. So that's what we're doing with these families is we're We're sharing with the sellers in the communities that our clients are looking. You know, we have these wonderful clients, buyers that are so excited to buy and they're ready. You know,
Yeah.
are you having thoughts of moves? So Ryan, why don't you walk them through what we've got?
Yeah. So can you guys see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we have an urgent buyer need card here, and this is something that we would, send out or even walk our neighborhoods that our buyers are looking in, and they pretty much says we have a list of buyers and they're qualified up to a certain amount, and it lists kind of what they're looking for in a home. So this has worked very well in, like you said, finding that home that's not even on the market yet.
Yep.
This is something a little more specific that we do with our clients who, again, are very motivated and they are looking to purchase a home. So this is a past one, and we do use, our clients are okay with it and they give us permission. We will use personal names, or even, as you'll see here, we could use a family picture. And, we have some other techniques and whatnot, but so this is a letter to a homeowner looking for, possibly to sell. And our clients are, of course, very motivated, and this is what we would do for them, either a drop off or mail.
Yeah, what's fun about this flyer? So we did find a home for this family, and for a buyer, if you're if we're helping you find a home and you're comfortable, including a photograph of you and your family, it makes the seller
Hmm.
that we mail this to, it feels more real. A lot of
Yeah.
people get a letter that says that an agent is trying to help a buyer look for a home, but we were looking in a very specific community in Lafayette. They had their eye on a certain property, and we mailed this out to several hundred families. We actually sent this letter out a few times because we knew that they were very excited, and we did find them a house. And the seller who called us, we ended up with two or three home sellers in that area calling us to tell us about their homes coming. The one that they bought, the lady said, I've ignored letters like this for years, but because you were very specific and the client's picture, to her it felt real. So
Yeah.
if anyone gives us permission, that's a wonderful tool. But we're so eager to help. We'll, like Ryan said, we'll get out and canvas neighborhoods that buyers love. We'll
Mhm.
make phone calls into communities. So share a little bit, Ryan, about the client that you're working with right now.
Yeah, so I'm sure they wouldn't mind me revealing their name, but Ame and Deepti, they are looking in San Ramon, and they're really looking for a nice family home with great schools.
Yep.
And right now, as we had mentioned earlier, San Ramon and Danville, um, the market's crazy. So they're looking also in Danville, and they can't find something that's on the market. They're getting beat out by so many other offers, and they're very strong, qualified buyers.
Yep.
So we looking around and calling around specific areas in San Ramon, and we have a couple homeowners that are going to let them see their home because they're willing to, like you said, uh, go for the ease of selling it off market, and they don't have to have, especially during COVID and the pandemic, a lot of homeowners are nervous about having hundreds of people in one weekend. So they can avoid that. They can be flexible with terms as far as if the seller needs a rent back, or say the seller is moving to Idaho in June, right? They don't want to be out of the home until June. Well, Ame and his wife Deepti have a flexible timeline to where they can offer that as well.
Yeah.
So, it can work out for both parties. And, this is just one thing, calling around and even canvassing as far as going door to door. That's something that you and I do willingly for our clients.
All the time. We were chatting, laughing about this because I bought my house. Greg and I have been in our home for almost 25 years. So we knew a few neighborhoods that we wanted to buy. And it was interesting because I had a client looking at the same time. So I figured, okay, so I'm going to get out into these communities and I'm going to canvas the whole community I was looking for them first. So I found them a house. And then one of the homes, I was just like Ryan said, we're just canvassing, right? We're out foot to foot, right? Just out there doing everything we can to try to help the buyer find a home. So I knocking the family, I knocked on the door across the street, and the man who then became a friend later, he said, that guy across the street, he's moving. And so he said, you should go talk to him. So sure enough, he sold us his house. So it's like, this
Yeah.
works. It really does. And he was eager to sell, and we gave him an extra 3 or 4 months to move because, he needed time. So that's one tip for a buyer is go into this with the ability, if you can, to be flexible on timing. Because right now,
Mhm.
every seller who's selling, they all need a few months to go where they're going,
Yeah.
sometimes longer than a few months, sometimes, 3 or 4 months. So if you can be that flexible person, you will get a lot farther. Rent backs that you can offer at no cost is a big one too. It's like there's so
Mhm.
many tips and tools once we get to an offer place. Um, like Darrell said, be totally ready to go, be underwritten, be non-contingent, be no contingent for your loan, that have it completely secured, but be willing to give the seller time, be willing to be flexible. I mean, buyers, we are in a seller environment right now. Buyers need to be really on top of their game, which we are excited to help them through that, So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So what are the other questions, Ryan? I know, we get buyers asking us questions all the time about this crazy market. What do you think? What's some of the questions that you're having your clients are asking you, and then we can give them answers.
Well, they're asking if they can submit any preemptive offers on markets or homes that are already on the market, right? So say the home came on the market on Thursday and they see it Friday, can we submit an offer tonight? And oftentimes what we're seeing is the homes are accepting preemptive offers. So
Yeah.
it's important to have that awareness. And, of course, we want everyone to work with us, and we offer a really great fiduciary service. But if you have their realtor, it's important that you're asking them, hey, can we write a preemptive offer? Because it's really important that when the deadline is. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of, and a lot of buyers are missing out on homes because they don't know when that offer deadline is.
Yeah, exactly. Darrell, one of the things that buyers are asking us right now is, you mentioned interest rates have creeped a little bit. We
Right.
don't have a crystal ball, certainly. What do you think? I mean, where do you think we're headed? Is like 6 months from now, a year from now, do you think we'll see rates higher? This is something that buyers and sellers need to be watching.
Well, that's a tough one to answer. I would say, though, that I think a lot of it depends on how the economy plays out. I mean, obviously, we kind of have to ask, how did we get where we are right now, right?
Yeah.
It was funny. I had a client I was talking to the other day, and they go, well, do you think we'll go, this was probably the last Friday before we started seeing a little bit of an increase. And they go, well, do you think rates will go much lower? And I go, well, I certainly hope not. And they kind of went, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I go, do you have to understand, it's not a coincidence in terms of where we are as a, country, the world, the things that we're dealing with. There was a reason rates are this low, right? So you kind of almost want to see things get a little bit better, because that means hopefully we're getting better, right? So, I anticipate maybe a slight increase in rates, over the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, we're still looking at pretty much near all-time lows, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's one thing that buyers need to be aware of. So part of the reason why our market is so hot is because rates have come so far down. Because
Right.
back in 2019, I mean, we had in the East Bay, our market had softened back quite a bit. I mean, our rates were almost 5%, right, Darrell? They were like upper fours. And
Yeah,
that was a
some
big rise
programs.
very quickly. We went from 3-ish to almost 5 in like a bam. And that just made the market kind of come to a little bit of a, so,
Right.
and then all of a sudden rates fell, and, beginning of last year. And then, we've been active ever since, and heated, more heated because of COVID. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely something to be aware of. Rates can change pretty fast,
Yeah, and I think too, the fact is that, the other thing that actually has helped, is the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve has signaled that they're going to keep their rates, which are, there's a kind of a trickle down effect.
Right.
They're going to keep their rates, at this point, indefinite. I mean, they really want to see the economy starting to come back around. We get glimpses here and there, but we're still obviously, the vast majority of the country, we're not open, right? So as that happens, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I know the Federal Reserve is very motivated to keep rates low. There's still market factors like we saw this past week, but those things sometimes level off, right? So I think for the foreseeable future, we might see a slight increase in rates, but we're going to see rates at these levels, for the foreseeable future.
We've got some work to do. I mean, real estate is one of the segments of the market that is active. One of the segments of the economy, like, I think real estate is one of the driving factors in the economy improving. I think our industry will help that. All over the country, real estate has been more active, but there are, all of the other industries that have struggled need to get back to work fully. The restaurants and all the hospitality and all the things that the parts of the economy that are important as well. So, rates staying low, that would make sense, for the economy to get back on track 100%,
Yeah.
But there's one other tip that I wanted to share as far as sellers. And so if there's any seller, because of course, half of the buyers are also sellers, right? They have a home that they want to leave. To give a tip, one of the things that when Darrell said in the beginning that buyers need to be fully prepared, one of the things that will cause you to get more buyers that really step to the table fully prepared is to do all of your inspections up front. I've had so many sellers in the last 6 months really resisting that idea. They don't want to spend the money because they figure the buyer will just do it. But honestly, having everything up front, that means a buyer can walk in. In some cases, they want to do their own inspections, but in most cases, with a reputable inspection companies, they'll look at those reports and they will come in completely non-contingent, which is what you want. You want to, the day one, there's no place where the buyer can back out. And if you don't do inspections, you leave the window open. And I have to say, I have one circumstance with a house right now where we did not do inspections up front, and the house would appear to be a pretty solid house. It was in good shape. But there's just some issues that we discovered. Had we known ahead of time, it would have helped. It would have helped the seller with their negotiations had we known ahead of time. So something to be aware of as a seller. When you are in that space, we always like to give tips for buyer and seller. Doing those.
Oh, hey, one tip actually, as I was listening to that, Lisa, one I think is very important is if you have solar, the importance of getting that paperwork. So if Lisa or Ryan are listing your house, get that paperwork to them right away and let someone like myself or your preferred lender, let them look at it.
Yeah.
Because the one that comes, I had one that was, kind of to share a horror story with you. And this was, he was a loan I was doing his loan. He was a loan officer for a large bank, and he came to me to do the loan. So I was very humbled by that. It was nice of him. And as we're going through the process, I have nothing to do, of course, with the sale of his house, right? I need his house to sell in order to get the funds and close the transaction that we're working on. But what happened was he had a type of solar that it couldn't be transferred. So he was already in contract. And so what do? I mean, the seller, he had to sell the property, right? They had agreed upon the sales price. So long story short, the buyers of his house ended up basically getting $40,000 worth of solar for free because he had to pay it off through the transaction.
Wow. Yeah. Just everyone being prepared is so critical.
Absolutely.
More today than ever. It's like sellers, we are definitely in a more of a seller driven market. We have our cycles where sometimes it's a buyer driven market and today is a seller driven market. So the sellers feel like maybe they don't have to worry about these things because it doesn't matter, but it really does. It's like the more prepared you can be as a buyer or a seller, the whole entire process is going to be easier and smoother on you if you do your homework up front, regardless of whether you're a buyer or seller.
Yeah.
So
Lisa,
absolutely.
if a seller wanted to pay through escrow for the inspections, is that possible?
I think so. I think some of our inspectors would allow that. I think they get a better value of the cost if they do it up front. Like they'll get a little discount if they pay for it up front. But yes, I do believe that we can run through the escrow. So that's a good point. That's a good point to share, is they don't necessarily have to come out of pocket, although those aren't real expensive, but every little bit makes a difference. So sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Darrell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Everyone has been, your world, I know you guys are going crazy probably with all the refinancing and all the, everybody's so busy and, but we so appreciate your time, and, your world has gotten to be such an important question for buyers,
It comes up quite a bit, but I mean, I think I tell clients all the time, I have to tell them up front is that, I'm very purchase driven because that's really how you sustain yourself in this business, and it's like everything's purchases, and I do as many refinances as I can kind of squeeze in, right? So I'll get off this call and work on a couple of refinances that I took in, but they definitely take a backseat to purchases. They have to.
Yeah. Purchases are more timely. They're time sensitive. So
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if anyone watching needs a great lender, let's say you're just having thoughts about buying a home and you're not really like ready to jump in. Of course, Ryan and I are happy to help people prepare for sometimes a few years. Buyers are always concerned about wasting our time. You're never wasting our time. We've had families come to us, hey, we'd love to buy a home. They have this dream in their heart, but they need time to prepare. Don't worry. It's never too soon to ask questions. We would never make you feel like you're rushed, but talking to Darrell first is such the great way to start your journey and prepare and, get on the right path so that when you do find a home that you love, you're not, there's no delay. So
Mhm.
yeah, but thanks for joining, everyone.
Mm.
Let us know if you have any questions, anyone, feel free to call us anytime.
All right. See you guys
All right.
later.
There. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.